to move on to our next speaker. Matt Hancock is the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care, and he's going to join us now. Again, he is dyslexic, and he is another example of innovation, of perseverance, and of also just keeping on going. So, Matt, join us.
Well, thank you very much, Your Royal Highness, ladies and gentlemen, my fellow dyslexics, dyspraxics, dyscalculics. I put that in just to test myself. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here, not least because last year I came out as someone whose brain is wired differently. Now, in the last year, you might think that all politicians' brains have been wired differently. And in many cases, you may well be right. But I came out as a dyslexic after many years of hiding it, many professional years of fearing it and fearing talking about it, and before that, many years at school of struggling with it. And I'm thrilled to be invited back because the thing I want to say is that I have been so overwhelmed by the love and support that I've received since I went public. I'll say it one more time. I'm Matt Hancock. I'm the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care. I'm a member of the Cabinet, and I'm made by dyslexia. It's something that... And since talking about it in public, the response that I've received has made me doubly determined to do anything and everything I can to support people with dyslexia, both in my role in government and also speaking out about it. Because it isn't a handicap or a hindrance, but a huge advantage that we have to harness to reshape our world for the better. And I think that it was incredibly telling, the link between that picture that Richard Branson just talked about, and the ability to see the big picture, which of course space gives you, and the capabilities that we have as dyslexics and others with neurodiversity. Now, I'm hugely proud every time someone comes up to me and says, thank you for coming out as a dyslexic because it's helped me, or often because it's helped my son or my daughter. But I also want to tell you that there's so much more to do. And I'll give you one example that really, for me, brings it home. When I, last year, talked about being dyslexic, two members of the Cabinet told me that they were also dyslexic. We're a bit like London buses. But the thing is, only one of them's gone public. And the other one doesn't want to go public and fears the impact of going public, just like I did. And that's despite the fact that I'm now badgering him and telling him or her. Actually, it hasn't narrowed it down too much, but that's another subject. But the task of this group, amazing group of people, the task of all of you here in the audience, the task of all of us is not yet complete. And this idea, Maggie, that you just talked about, that you could put I am dyslexic on a CV with confidence, let us set that as the test of success. When you can do that, then society will truly have come to terms with just how great we dyslexics are. Because it's only when we can all have the confidence to talk about our capabilities and how we think differently that we'll really have succeeded. Now, it's fitting that we're here at the Science Museum. Thomas Edison, Alexander Graham Bell, Einstein, of course, some of the finest minds ever to have lived have been made by dyslexia. Your laptop, your smartphone, your car that you came in, they were all made by dyslexia. In fact, if it wasn't for things like made by dyslexics, like the spell checker in Microsoft Word, there's a good chance that I wouldn't be standing in front of you tonight. That has saved my career once or twice, I can tell you. So thank you, Bill, from a teenage Matt Hancock. I really owe you one. I've just got one suggestion for how Microsoft Word could be better, because I was using it to write this speech And when I right-clicked on dyslexia looking for a synonym, it came up with no suggestions. In my opinion, when you right-click on dyslexia, it should come up with innovative thinker, don't you think? So there is still much more that we need to do. And I just wanted to talk a little about the fact that dyslexia is the single biggest driver of ingenuity, imagination, and scientific achievement in human history. And I know this. I know it's a bold claim, but I know. Because when you look at the inventions and the innovations that have had the biggest impact on human progress, including so many here in this museum, so many of them have flowed from dyslexic minds. Imagine being able to talk to someone on the other side of the Atlantic for the first time, when it used to take weeks for letters to arrive. Imagine being able to drive further and faster than a whole team of horses could ever take you. Imagine being liberated from darkness by simply flicking a switch. These innovations are incredible. The impact they had, the positive impact they had on humanity is extraordinary. And we know for certain that these innovations came from dyslexic brains. And we all know, those of us who are dyslexic, we know the bright spark, that innovation that you can get. I guess the person who invented fire was probably dyslexic as well, thinking laterally and creatively, visualizing something in a way nobody else had ever thought possible before, getting rid of the wads of paper that straight-line people can work with, and instead making connections that they simply couldn't see. So I think that if you could put the positive attributes of dyslexia in a drug, it would be a billion-pound wonder drug. But for too long, we've focused on fitting us into the system rather than changing the system to focus on what we're good at. And that needs to change. Now, I hadn't finished yet, but if you want me to go, I can. Because I've got one other point to make, which I'll get to quickly since you're now standing. And the other point I want to make is this. You'll be hearing from Jeremy Fleming later at GCHQ, they have done so much to demonstrate the brilliant power of hiring dyslexics. But there's a serious point that I want to make as well. Because this charity is wonderful in its optimism. And you as an audience are brilliant in your optimism. But we also need to remember this. The dyslexics who end up on this stage and at these events are the dyslexics who made it despite the system and got through. We also must remember that too many people with neurodiversity don't. Too many end up either not fulfilling their potential, and sometimes in a way that is frustrating and disappointing, but also too many fail much more significantly. Too many end up in our prisons, too many end up out of school. Those who went through 4 schools, I didn't know that before, before the age of 10, and prosper and get to that seat are few and far between. So yes, let's be optimistic. Yes, the future of the world will be built by people who can be creative and connect, especially as the machines increasingly do the boring straight line stuff that we can't do. But let's also remember that we are the lucky ones who managed to prosper through our neurodiversity and weren't brought down by it. So there is much to do. There is much to do in the education system. There's much to do in the health system. There's much to do as a society to celebrate and embrace dyslexics, yes, but there's also much to do to support every dyslexic to be able to achieve their potential, because far too often that's wasted. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Matt. That was brilliant. No one's met my mother, and you'll understand why I did okay, because she's a formidable woman, and you always need someone fighting for you, don't you? And also, I think every dyslexic probably needs spell check, because I don't think I've ever spelt it right or in the right way. It's out of my possibility of being able to do that. So thank you. But yes, thank you for all the work you've done.